Welcome back to our video tutorial series. Today's video discusses similarities and differences between lists and tuples. We talked about data types, and I said there are a few types of lists. There's what we just call a list, and there's another one that we call a tuple. So what's the difference? Let's look at this. Let's bring into memory, we had defined a list and a tuple, C and D. Hey, look at this. They both look pretty much the same. They say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the only thing that we see, oh, the list gets the bracket, the tuple gets the parentheses. So let's try one thing. Let's check. They look pretty much the same. Are they the same? And so I compare them. If the list C and D, are we equal? Let's try this. And it says, oh, they differ. So what I've done here, careful comparison, not assignment. Equal, equal is a comparison. So if C is the same as D, it says, no, it's not. So, but what if I compare and say, what if the first element in C is the same as the first element in D, and the first element or the second element in C is the same as the second in D, and the third element match, and the fourth match? So let's try and ask this. And it says, oh, the content is equal. So if they are actually anyway the same, I index them the same. I've worked with them pretty much the same way. So what's different? Let's try and have a look. If I change the fourth element in C, and I do the dirty version where I just say C, I can change this. My fourth element, I assign it the value. So I gave it the value -1, and we see here's my -1. Let's do the same thing with the tuple. D is our tuple. And what we get is a type error. It says tuple object does not support item assignment. And that is the real difference between them. A list is something that's called mutable. And mutable means we are allowed to modify it once it exists. A tuple is immutable, and that is we can create one, but we can no longer modify it. So that brings us to the question, why the heck would I want to create something that I cannot modify if I have something that works the same way and I can modify it? And the rationale is it's safety. If you want to hand over information to a function, let's say your friend wrote a function. Your friend may have used the same variable names that you do. You don't know if your friend's code, if you hand over a pointer to a list, is messing with your data. You want to protect that data, so you send it as a tuple. Because if his code is trying to modify stuff, if it's a list, it gets modified and you don't know that things can rank wrong. If it's a tuple and your friend tries to modify it, Python will scream and say, oh, type error, you're not allowed to do this. And at that point, you and your friend start talking and say, what did you have in mind? What did you have in mind? And you come up with a solution, say, oh, we have to change the code so that works. That's a typical thing. So a tuple is for me a safety measure. If I want to give data to a different function, but I don't allow that function to modify stuff. And it turns out for me in programming, unless I know I need to modify things, I start using tuples much more than lists.